After a federal campaign during which Alberta felt ignored, the first one-on-one meeting between Danielle Smith and the new federal Prime Minister Mark Carney drew significant attention. It took place on Friday, May 2, 2025, the first since Carney, leader of the Liberal Party, won the April 28, 2025 election. Against all expectations, Smith publicly described the discussion as positive, emphasizing that it was a positive first step toward repairing the damage done to Alberta's economy. This meeting, seen as unusual given the previously tense relationship, raises hopes of unlocking certain energy projects and calls for a fact-based examination of the issues. Smith and Carney held an extended meeting on May 2, 2025, just days after Carney won the federal election. It was their first meeting since the Liberal victory. Smith warned the new Prime Minister that she would not hesitate to oppose any federal measures deemed hostile to Alberta. She raised concerns about federal policies she believes are hindering Alberta's energy economy, such as the carbon tax and environmental regulations. They also discussed the Canada-US trade dispute and the need to work together to advance the interests of both Alberta and Canada. Smith emphasized that repairing the damage done to Alberta's economy by a decade of anti-resource policies would require significant effort, but said this meeting marked a positive first step. Smith stressed her high expectations, while Carney thanked her on social media. He highlighted their shared commitment to lowering the cost of living and increasing energy sector opportunities for Albertans. He also emphasized their common goal of removing interprovincial trade barriers in the energy sector to build a strong Canadian economy. In summary, the meeting was lengthy and focused on concrete issues: energy, cost of living, and domestic trade, with a neutral tone and a stated willingness to cooperate, at least on the surface. Alberta and Ottawa have been in conflict for several years. The federal governments of Trudeau and now Carney have implemented environmental policies, emissions caps, pipeline restrictions Bill C-69, the carbon tax, a tanker moratorium off the coast of British Columbia, among others that many Albertans view as hostile to the province's oil and gas interests. Danielle Smith considers these measures an intrusion into provincial jurisdiction and a drag on the local economy. During the federal election campaign, Smith criticized Carney and praised Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre as a defender of Alberta. Following the vote, she issued a statement calling for a reset in federal-provincial relations through concrete action. She notably declared, "We are proud to be United Canadians, but we will no longer tolerate our industries being threatened and our resources blocked by Ottawa." This statement underscores the prevailing sense of mistrust within the province. The Smith government recently passed legislation lowering the threshold for triggering provincial referendums, including on separation from Canada. This move was sharply criticized, notably by Indigenous leaders, as fueling separatist sentiment, but it reflects the broader climate of distrust toward Ottawa. At the same time, Smith demanded a list of guarantees pipeline project revivals, a rollback of federal energy regulations in exchange for accepting the Liberal victory. She even took the federal government to Alberta's Court of Appeal to challenge the constitutionality of the new clean electricity regulations. These actions highlight the province's determination to protect its local industry at all costs, and the growing pressure on Ottawa to adjust its energy and environmental policies. On the energy front, the most immediate issue concerns pipelines and infrastructure. Smith is demanding that Ottawa guarantee the development of new pipelines in all directions to prevent Alberta's oil from remaining landlocked. According to Smith's account, Carney clearly indicated that he intends to quickly advance such national pipeline and energy infrastructure projects. If this verbal support materializes, it could ease Alberta's access to new markets and reduce the discount on heavy oil in global markets. Additionally, Carney proposed fast-tracking all nationally significant projects through a one-project, one-assessment mechanism, significantly reducing approval timelines. In theory, this would benefit major oil and gas initiatives' new pipelines and gas lines by simplifying bureaucratic procedures. Both Smith and Carney emphasized their goal of lowering the cost of living while creating more opportunities in Alberta's energy sector. If the federal government follows through with investments and market expansion, it could lead to increased investment, more jobs in exploration and extraction, and higher oil revenues for the province. Conversely, without concrete changes, businesses may remain hesitant. Analysts note that if key constraints such as the pipeline moratorium persist, the industry will continue redirecting its cash flow to shareholders rather than growth. Carney has expressed his intent to build a strong Canadian economy by working with the provinces. In practical terms, this means he will have to consider provincial demands in his approach, such as interprovincial energy transport, substitution agreements for environmental assessments, and Indigenous consultations. Moreover, Carney, a former central bank governor, has promised to make Canada an energy superpower, both in clean and conventional energy. He is betting on developing oil and gas alongside emissions reduction, carbon capture, renewables. The key challenge will be how well he balances these two objectives, for example, by accelerating pipeline construction while maintaining strong environmental standards. As Prime Minister, Mark Carney is working to improve the Liberal image in the West. He is seen as more pragmatic than Trudeau and has a strong background in economics, but he remains the archetype of a moderate environmentalist. His energy transition rhetoric supporting both fossil fuels and renewables could reassure some Albertans, but he will ultimately be judged by his actions, including concrete support for oil infrastructure and respect for provincial demands. Smith, for her part, will aim to show that her hardline stance is paying off. If Ottawa provides guarantees and backs projects, she can argue that a firm strategy gets results. For now, the concrete impact will depend largely on Carney's first announcements and those of his energy ministers on carbon pricing, pipeline approvals, and investments in carbon capture. This first meeting between Danielle Smith and Mark Carney marks a turning point in Alberta federal relations. For the first time in a long while, the Alberta Premier described a meeting with Ottawa as positive. However, it will need to be followed by tangible outcomes to be truly meaningful. As Carney reminded, the shared goal is to build a strong Canadian economy, which will require finding a balance between energy projects and climate commitments. At present, observers emphasize that everything will depend on actions. A clear commitment from Ottawa on pipelines and national projects could give new momentum to Alberta's economy, while a lack of concrete steps would fuel ongoing resentment. In short, this meeting has opened a window of opportunity, but time will tell whether it remains just a good feeling or the beginning of a true economic and political partnership between Alberta and the Carney government.